The Persnickety Witch of Fiddyment Creek by Gaye Pollinger, Chapter 10. The Morgans gave us direction to their home in Lake Forest via Chicago's Lakeshore Drive. That way we avoided the elevated train, called the L, and city traffic. We passed Buckingham Fountain and its summertime visitors before turning north. It was a glorious day, and the harbor and lake were dotted with lots of colorful sailboats. The lake was the color of turquoise and blue sapphire, and you could almost not tell where the sky met the water on the horizon. As we drove on the outskirts of the Windy City, we were aware of the spectacular skyline, and we began to see homes across the street from the shore. Many were three-story stately homes with big fenced yards, and originally for carriages that covered area over the driveway beside the homes to protect passengers from the weather before the driver moved the car into the 5 or 10 car garage. Gardeners tended to the lawns, shrubberies, and flower gardens. Everything looked absolutely perfect. "We're almost there," Pearl said. "Turn left at the next light." The final turn was onto Lakeside Lane. Trees were lined up along the curbs on both sides of the street and formed a thick canopy. Pearl pointed to Michael's house. "There it is." Tom whistled. Their home was one of the historic estate homes built in the late 1800s, and Michael and Gayle had restored it to its original charm. The drive circled in front of the huge home. We stopped at the closed gate, and Tom pushed the button. "Who's calling, please?" a deep voice said. The McGuires," said Tom. "Drive forward and park at the side, please," the voice said, and then giggled. I couldn't wait to see inside the house, and as soon as we parked, the door opened and the kids all hurried out to help us with the things. "Hey, Gabby, was that you answering the doorbell?" Tom asked as he held Gabby in a headlock and ruffled his auburn hair. Abby and Gabby took our luggage to the guest house on the other side of the rear of the garden, and then hurried back to the main house. "Hi, Aunt Pearl," said Kathy and Jameson. They both gave her a big kiss on the cheek. "Your room is in here," Jameson continued. "Gayle said you would be comfortable." And he stopped and stomped his foot and crossed his arms. "What's that word?" he whispered loudly to Kathy. "Comfortable," Jameson. "Comfortable. Remember?" said Kathy. She had an irritating edge to her voice. "Yes, indeed, I will be comfortable," said Pearl. "I had my own room here ever since they bought this house. Want to see it, Lucy?" "Absolutely. Lead the way," I answered. Before we got to her room, Pearl showed us the gourmet kitchen, the butler's pantry, a beautiful family room, the formal living room, which overlooked the lake, formal dining room, the library, the music room, Michael's home office, and 2 of its 4 fireplaces. That was just the main floor and didn't even cover the wings on either side. The house had 3 stories with dormers on the top floor. It was sprawling, comfortable, and tastefully decorated, but not opulent. "I thought my house was big," I muttered to myself during the tour. "Well, sometimes large homes are necessary," Pearl said. "Michael does a lot of entertaining of clients and friends. He's on the board of directors for several nonprofit organizations, and they hold their annual board meetings here and things like that. There are 8 bedrooms, and each has its own bath. There are 3 half baths, and there are 3 bedrooms and 2 sofa beds in the guest house." Pearl's room was exquisite, but looked like her. It was warm and inviting. The room had a French antique bed which beckoned, "Come hither," and was covered by a white satin fluffy down comforter, and there was a white quilt with various shades of pink roses folded at the foot of the bed. Other antiques were thoughtfully placed around the room. A tall armoire stood majestically against one wall. A huge white fluffy rug adorned the mahogany hardwood floor. "Who made the quilt, Pearl?" "Oh, my mother did. Isn't it lovely?" I went over to examine the work. My, the stitches are absolutely perfect. And the quilting is fabulous." "Hi there," Gayle said as she rushed in. Their golden retriever Taffy was with her, wagging her tail and anxious to meet the new people. "I figured Pearl would be giving you the grand tour." She embraced both of us. I hope you haven't worried about the kids. Your kids are so well behaved, Lucy. It's been a joy to have them here. But I'll let them tell you the stories. Let's go out to the garden and have some tea and scones, all right? The three of us moved down the hallway while Gail pointed out various paintings and decor changes she had made. She was quite the interior decorator. We went through beveled glass pane French doors to the backyard from the kitchen. The patio was partially shaded by an overhead trellis covered with climbing, flowering plants. The patio had been beautifully and tastefully decorated with furniture, an outdoor dining table and matching chairs, which we learned had been made by Michael. There were several steps down to the pool and several lounge chairs around it. Gail talked about the various things they had done to restore their home, and I couldn't imagine it any other way than it now stood. Lucy, Pearl, Gail said between sips of hot tea, would you at all be interested in riding into town with me? I need to stop by the butcher shop and I could show you around a little. In fact, let's make it a girls' afternoon and leave the kiddos and the men here to fend off intruders. Do you think they're up to it? I asked. Like fending off intruders, I mean? Oh, sure, they can fight the Vikings and then swim with their kids and have a good time without us here, Gail said. She approached Michael and told him our plans, and he smiled and told us to have a good time. We piled into their car, a shiny new midnight blue Cadillac, and headed to town. As we drove along, Gail told us about the sights as we passed them. She explained that they had chosen Lake Forest for several reasons, because of its charm, location, close to downtown Chicago, and the lake, and they had fallen in love with the house. Lake Forest was a very affluent community, and when it was first developed, the general concept reflected in the plan was of a city in a park, with its picturesque streets laid out in such a manner that it took into account the natural features as the ravines and lake bluffs, instead of forcing the street plan into a formal grid. She explained to us that several longtime residents had been meeting to form a land conservation organization and purchase open space in the interest of preserving animal habitat, restoring ecosystems, and providing environmental education for the city's children. Since I was interested in beautifying Fiddyment, I was eager to learn all I could. The business area was charming and quaint and clean. Parking was at a diagonal. The streets and sidewalks were in good repair. They were all well cared for. And there were plants hanging from the old-fashioned armed streetlights. Many of the shops had clever names, and many had colorful awnings over the doorway. All the shops had something inviting at the front door. The window displays were beautifully arranged. There were park benches to rest on and visit while other folks were waiting for a shopper, and the French bakery gave away free donut holes when a dozen donuts were purchased. 2 small tables and chairs were out in front for the patrons to have a cup of coffee and a French sweet treat. People were warm and friendly and seemed to know everyone by name. Well, I must say, I said as I snapped pictures with my camera, this is delightful and gives me some good ideas for Fiddyment. I think it'll be a fun project, don't you, Pearl? Yes, I do. I'd even like to donate some of the plants I know you're thinking about, if you don't mind, answered Pearl. Between my garden and yours and the greenhouse, we can add a little color to downtown Fiddyment. You might want to think about an open-air market, Gail suggested. That's always a big draw around here. It's held on Saturday mornings during the summer, or an autumn craft fair at the square. I bet there will be some great creative talent in Fiddyment. Ah, here's the meat grinder. We went into the butcher shop, and Gail asked for ribs, and the plan was to marinate them overnight and then bake them until they fell off the bone. We women would make the side dishes and have a good old Southern-style feast. If we get some buttermilk, I'll make a buttermilk pie, Pearl said. You're on, Gail said. That is definitely one of your specialties, Pearl, and it just isn't made around here. We paused in front of the children's clothing store. I chuckled at its name. It's called Too Big for My Britches. And then Gail pointed to a building across the street. One of the businesses was a restaurant, the Lantern, which looked like it belonged in the French Quarter. It had whitewashed brick and wrought iron rails on either side of the entrance, and the window box with geranium at the base of the window. Beautiful. Small pane windows allowed us to see the tables inside. A chalkboard menu was posted on the door, and basically it was a friendly neighborhood restaurant for the locals. That's one of our favorite places, and we're taking everyone there for dinner tonight, Gail told us. I'm sure you'll love it. When we got home, the kids were just getting out of the pool, and Michael and Tom were already dressed and lounging on the patio. Hey, girls, have fun? Michael asked. And yes, I made reservations for 6:30. I told them you were coming, Aunt Pearl, and you know what they want. Oh, my, I don't know if I'm up to that, Pearl said. Up for what? I asked. No, don't tell them, Gail said. Let's make it a surprise. Have you ever been back to the guest house? Here, let me take you. And if it's okay, if Abby helps your kiddos get dressed and ready. With that, the surprise was forgotten, and Gail took us to the guest house. As I expected, it was charming inside and out, and decorated like an English cottage. The living and dining rooms shared a cathedral ceiling and a fireplace. Tall windows framed the living room fireplace. A pass-through joined the dining room to a combination kitchen and family room, which featured a snack bar and a window. There was a separate sleeping wing, which had a master suite, a skylight in the dressing area, and a luxurious bath. The den, or the third bedroom, shared a second full bath with another bedroom. Each room had been painstakingly decorated. Wow, I whispered after Gail left. This feels so comfortable, I halfway expect Prince Charming to come through the door. Well, here I am, Tom said, and he kissed me tenderly. We were dozing when the phone rang. McGuire's summer home, some are here and some are not, Tom said in an Irish brogue. There was a silence, and then I think I must have... Wait a minute, Tom, is that you? Michael asked. McGuire's summer home? Man, where did that come from? He said as he chuckled. These two men had become good friends in a short time. Oh, I don't know, Tom answered. Gail wanted me to let you know that she's made appetizers, and you can come back over to the main house anytime, but we'll be leaving at 6 o'clock, and we need to take both cars. The lantern had a lit oil lantern hanging outside, little white twinkle lights around the windows fringed with French fabric curtains, and candles already glowed on each table. The inside was decorated in a style of an old country French home. Simon, the maitre d', greeted them at the door. Oh, good evening, Morgan family and friends. How nice to see you this evening. Your table is ready. Please follow me, he said in a velvety British accent. Miss Pearl, how are you this evening? I'm very well, Simon, and thank you for asking, she said as he seated her. I always enjoy coming here. The food and service were quite good. At the end of the meal, the owner came over to greet us and whispered something to Pearl. She dabbed the corner of her mouth with her napkin and stood. He escorted her to a little stage area, and she sat behind a hammered dulcimer set on a stand at an angle. Pearl picked up the mallets and began to play. Delightful, sweet strains of anything she played wafted from the dulcimer. Jameson looked at me wide-eyed, and lips formed a perfect O. He climbed onto my lap for a better view. Mama, Kathy whispered. That's beautiful. What's it called? I want to play it. Could I, Mama? The restaurant that used to be abuzz with conversation and platter-clatter was now quiet. Everyone paid attention and everyone listened. Everyone loved it. I could hear folks seated close to me whispering about how beautiful it was. After 15 minutes or so, Pearl finished, and the restaurant owner went to her and thanked her for giving them the gift of beautiful music and escorted her back to her seat amid enthusiastic applause. Well, Aunt Pearl, you still got it, Michael said. That was something else. Next time I'll bring my auto harp and we can play as we used to on the front porch. Is everyone finished? Gail has dessert at home and we can leave whenever you're ready. Pearl, that was an incredible surprise, I said. I mean, I knew you played the dulcimer, but I've never heard one. And now you even have Kathy interested. Kathy with a C, is that true? Would you like to learn to play? Pearl asked Kathy. Oh, yes, Kathy, mesmerized, still whispered. Well, then I'll teach you. We were all in the kitchen back at the Morgan home. Gail made coffee and I cut slices from a 3-layer chocolate cake. Pearl was in charge of ice cream and a scoop. We had decided to have dessert and then play Monopoly in teams, and we were just getting everything on the table when the doorbell rang. Michael went to the door and we could hear him greet whoever it was. Jeff, you old son of a gun! Michael said as he slapped his back. How are you? Come on in. We're just having dessert. Everyone, this is my old friend and board-sitting colleague, Jeff Easterbrook. The Morgan family was happy to see them. Even Taffy barked a greeting and jumped onto his legs. Introductions were made, and he went around shaking hands, chatting a little with everyone. He was very charming and had a friendly way with people. Jefferson Davis Easterbrook was a tall, well-built man. He had white, wavy hair, a mustache, dark brown eyes, and a toothy smile that was contagious. His skin was leathery and tan from being outdoors. He spoke with a southern drawl, and his voice was rich and deep. Tonight he wore a white shirt, jeans, a jacket, and western boots. Pearl Morgan, I remember you, he said when he got to Pearl. He held both her hands in his. I'm sorry, she said, looking puzzled as she withdrew her hands. Have we met? I have been Pearl Witch for many years now. Aunt Pearl and my dad were twins, Michael told him. Yes, I remember, Jeff said. Well, Pearl, I visited your home in Virginia when I was much younger. I had business with your father, and I believe you're being courted by Willoughby Witch, and I was afraid he beat me to you. Yes, he did, Pearl replied and looked straight into his eyes. Please, Jeff, have a seat. Have you had dinner? Michael asked. Gabby, will you grab a chair from the dining room, please? No, I'm fine, thank you. We ate on the plane, but that cake looks awfully good. I've never been one to turn down chocolate. He sat at the table and crossed his long legs at his ankles. Well, how are things in Kentucky? Michael asked. Grand, the farm's doing nicely. I got 2 horses that are ready to race. I breed thoroughbred horses. I love horses, Jameson chimed in. You know, Jameson, you look like a little boy I saw on television that was carried off by a tornado nearly, said Jeff. Yup, that was me, Jameson proudly said. Me and Chester, that's Aunt Pearl's cat. We went for a sky ride. Wow, that must have been some ride, but if you love horses, you have to come to my farm and see mine. Maybe Armando would let you ride with him. At least you'd be a little lower to the ground. He winked at me. Would anybody like more cake? Gail asked. No, thanks, but I'll have a half-cup of coffee, please. Jefferson waited while Gail poured and then stood and went over to the vanilla ice cream, got a big scoop, and plopped it into his coffee. I see the Monopoly game's out and ready. Are you going to play? May I join you? Yes, we are, and yes, you may, said Michael. Wonderful. If we play in teams, might I play with Abby and Jameson? We'll probably beat you, so get ready for a fight. Right, Abby? Jameson, come on over here and sit on my lap so you can tell me what to do. The game got wild, and one team arguing and another loudly flaunting their purchases and another team pulling ahead with houses and hotels, and then the next team would buy a railroad. I spent quite a bit of time in jail. Jeff was very good to include Jameson in a decision being made and let him choose house or hotel tiles to put on the board. All right, Michael announced sadly to the group. My team is bankrupt. I believe Jeff and company have won the game fair and square. Do you all agree? Yeah, the kids grumbled. Well, then I pronounce this game of Monopoly finished. Michael said, Abby and Gabby, will you put Kathy and Jameson to bed, please? We'll see you all in the morning. After much ado of saying good night among hugs and kisses, all 4 children left the room. Gail came back from the kitchen carrying a tray with brandy snifters. So what brings you to the north? Michael asked Jeff. Each person found a comfortable seat, and they fell into a conversation about Jeff's visit to Chicago. He spoke slowly and deliberately as he recalled the story he was telling. We could tell the memories were very vivid for him. 6 weeks ago, Armando's daughter and granddaughter went into town on an errand. We're driving back to the farm. There was a terrible accident right where the main road and the driveway to Easterbrook Farms intersect. The car hit something and rolled over several times and blew up. Armando and I were at the stables and heard the explosion. We got in the truck and drove to the site and were the first to find them. His daughter was ejected through the windshield, and we found her in the field. She died at the scene. We were able to pull Tessa, his 11-year-old granddaughter, from the car, but she suffered horrible 3rd-degree burns and has been in and out of the hospital. There's a special burn unit here, and they wanted to do skin graft. I would hope that she could look normal someday. Right now, the scarring is just, it will take time and many surgeries. He stopped for a moment before he continued. I can't begin to imagine how much the medical bills must be, but I want to help. First graft is Monday morning, and I want to be there with Armando. He shouldn't be alone while he waits. The story of the accident and Tessa and the way he told it stabbed me in the heart. Gail, Pearl, and I all had tears in our eyes. Do you think there was foul play? Michael asked. Well, in my line of business, there's always jealous competitors and scoundrels, and my horses are well known in the racing world, so there is a police investigation. We were all quiet for several moments, thinking about the things he had told us. By the way, Jeff, if you have hotel reservations, please cancel them. You're welcome to stay here for as long as you need, Michael said. We have plenty of room. At first, Jeff didn't say anything. Thank you, Michael. Gail, your hospitable offer is graciously accepted. So much nicer to be around caring people like yourselves. I'll be here for a couple of days, and then I'll need to get back to the farm, and Armando will be staying at the hospital. Well, besides money for medical bills, is there anything else Armando needs? Michael asked. Well, I'm sure it's in the back of his brain. He's worried about raising Tessa, but getting her better is the main thing. Oh, I can't speak for others, but Gail and I would certainly like to help. Maybe we could start a trust fund, Michael said. The rest of us, Pearl, Tom, and I, all agreed that we would like to participate too. I had wondered how I would enter the world of philanthropy, and this was all new to me, helping in such a way. But as Pearl had told me, with wealth comes responsibility. This was definitely a worthy cause. Pearl smiled at me proudly. The next morning, the guest house phone rang. It was Michael telling us that all the kiddos were making breakfast and it would be ready in 45 minutes. He was taking Taffy for a walk and invited us to go with him. We did, and he told us that Jeff had been up early and discussed the possibilities of what we may be able to do. He's an interesting and charming man, I said. Does he have family? No, he never married. I asked about it several years ago, and he told me that he was too busy and involved in his work to have room for a family. Too much stuff on his plate, he said. I think he's made us his unofficial family because whenever he's in Chicago, he drops in on us. We love seeing him and having him around. I always invite him to come up for the holidays, but he never has. Maybe this year. Listen, I want to mention some things to the two of you about this particular philanthropic endeavor, okay? Michael proceeded to explain some of the things we would have to do and what the group would do to form a trust for Tessa. Okay, Taff, let's go home, Michael said, and Taffy sprinted ahead of us. You could feel the energy in the kitchen and breakfast room. Abby and Gabby were making French toast, bacon, and scrambled eggs. Kathy was setting the table, and Gail was dicing the fruit. Pearl and Jefferson were sipping coffee and occupied in conversation. I'm real sorry to hear that I didn't make a lasting impression on you, Jeff said. Well, I never said that, Jefferson Easterbrook. I only agreed that I was being courted by Willoughby, and you were too late. When I heard your name, I knew exactly who you were, but I never expected to run into you at my nephew's home after all these years. And tell me, madam, what have you done with yourself all these years hence? Jeff asked. Why do you want to know? She rebutted, but she also smiled. I noticed that her eyes sparkled. Simply curious catch-up conversation. Oh, well, I kept busy with Willow and the general store until he passed, and then I ran it alone and discovered that I was good at running businesses. Even started another store in a neighboring town. Michael lived with me after Earl and Willow drowned, and he helped me out at the store until he joined the Army. I watched out for Lucy from afar after her mama died, and we just reconnected earlier this summer. You can probably tell that the McGuires are like family to me, and that's a good thing because I stayed with them after I had a stroke, and I'm just now feeling ready to go back home. Breakfast is served, Abby said as she came into the room and put a platter of French toast on the table. Gabby followed her with platters of crispy bacon and scrambled eggs. Well, what's everybody's plans for today? Jeff asked. I'm baking pie right after breakfast, Pearl answered. Oh, really? Asked Abby. Her interest piqued. May I help you, Aunt Pearl? Yes, you may. I'm getting ready, the ribs ready for the oven, Gail said. And then I don't know. We hadn't made any definite plans. Well, we have to go home this evening or in the morning, Tom said. I've got marching band rehearsal tomorrow afternoon. Jeff looked surprised. Marching band? Are you a conductor? Jeff wanted to know. Yes, I am, and the science teacher at Fiddyment High. The band is really good this year, and we'll show our competition a thing or two at football games, Tom said. There's nothing like a high school football game on a chilly autumn evening. How far is Fiddyment from here? Maybe I could go to a game with you on one of my trips here. Well, you're always welcome at our place, Jeff, so I'll send you the schedule of our home games so you know how to plan, Tom replied. Wonderful, Jeff said. I'm going to the hospital a little later. Would any of you want to come with me? Armando would be happy for the company, I'm sure. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And remember, the Principal Grandma says, you'll never know what comes next until you turn the page.